You've survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun Show. This week, 5 things you didn't know about universal background checks. Serial killers in Detroit are preying on women, and I know a guy who's making a difference. He's training and has a goal of teaching over 900 women how to protect themselves. Did you know that Michigan has a history of serial killers? All this and more coming up next. This portion of the show is brought to you by Black Man with a Gun Reloaded. You can get your autographed copy from me directly by emailing me at blackmanwithagun@gmail.com. For only $20, Black Man with a Gun Reloaded is an autobiographical book about gun control, how I became a trainer, an activist, a speaker for the Second Amendment. This book has a glossary that will make you sharper. It belongs on the bookshelf of every gun owner. Black Man with a Gun Reloaded. Email me at blackmanwithagun@gmail.com today. It's also available on Amazon without the love.
Blackmanwithagun.com. Kenn Blachard's Pro Gun Podcast.
All right, after John Wayne leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I share with you 5 things you didn't know about universal background checks? Universal background check. Truth be known, universal background checks are not and cannot be universal. It's just a catchy marketing phrase, though. It's sticky. Universal background check. It's sold to the public, maybe not to you, as a crime prevention measure. Gun control groups, and especially even our governor in Virginia, is using it right now after the active shooter that just recently happened. Because it polls well with voters, until maybe voters know the truth. The idea being sold is that every firearm transaction needs to be approved by the government using a personal background check to ensure the buyer isn't a felon or prohibited person, and this allegedly will reduce violence with guns. The truth is, you're not a criminal until you commit a crime. Criminals don't do things legally. It has been against the law to murder people since before Moses. Here's 5 more points. The solution is nowhere close to being universal. 2, it's a political tool. 3, they have no impact on violence. 4, it's ripe for government abuse. And 5, it can't work without people registration. And who wouldn't comply with that? Universal background check requires universal participation. So an intelligent person would first ask, who would not participate once this law is passed? The answer is at least 40% of people who misuse guns, and upwards of 78%. Bureau of Justice Statistics, crime gun sources. The Bureau of Justice Statistics tallies crimes involving guns in their decadal reports titled Firearms Violence. In that report, the Bureau of Justice Statistics lists how many offenders got their guns and how they got them. This is our first clue to the non-universal nature of passing background checks. Let me break it down to you. According to the BJS, a full 40% of crime guns are acquired from completely off-the-radar sources. Most, 25%, come from, quote, drug dealer off-street, end quote, sources at the nexus of street gang culture. Another big chunk, 7% plus, are stolen directly by criminals, and an equal amount are from street dealers, the fellows who vend hot guns from the trunk of their cars. So ponder this for a minute, Batman. 40% of crime guns are acquired from and by people who have zero interest in obeying any law whatsoever. None, zip, nada, nilch. This is the largest category for crime gun sources, according to the BJS. And it is the one that the universal background check will have zero impact upon. At best, such laws would be impotent. But wait, the news gets worse. The next 38% of crime guns come from people classified as, quote, family or friend. The definition of a friend in such transactions is very broad and includes such buddies as drug dealers, drug users swapping contraband for weapons, women who knowingly perform strawman purchases or give guns to felon boyfriends, relatives who loan a gun to a felon for self-protection. Again, we must ask how many of these people would drop whatever they are doing, drive untold miles to a gun store, file paperwork, and wait for a background check before handing a pistol to another person. Since BJS does not itemize which type of, quote, family or friends are involved, we have to assume some portion of this 38% of crime guns are not tied directly to nefarious people. But since we know from other criminology literature that people within criminal enclaves or who routinely associate with violent criminals will bend the rules more readily than others, and we suspect the majority of this 38% of crime guns come from people who wouldn't bother with a universal background check. So the best case scenario is that 40% of crime guns won't be caught with universal background check, and as much as 78% will slide by undetected. Incidentally, less than 1% of crime guns are acquired at gun shows, likely due to the high presence of cops and responsible gun owners like you and me. The expected outcome versus the advertised one. We have a disconnect between the advertised purpose of universal background check and what will actually occur. The advertised purpose is to end transfers of guns to criminals, but we see that a minimum of 40% of such transfers come completely from black market operations. Hence, the proposals are impotent. They cannot achieve what they propose, given that upwards of 78% of crime guns would not be impacted by universal background check. Such laws become a monumental waste of time, unless there's some other objectives. In much of the language of these bills, which differ from state to state, the definition of who is a prohibited person in a firearms transfer is ill-defined on purpose. It is obvious that prohibited persons would include people from felony convictions for violent crime, but the San Francisco sheriff is apparently guilty of violent spouse abuse. In many places, he would be on the prohibited persons list. Another example may hit closer to home. A friend of mine volunteered to be part of a mutual restraining order after his ex-wife committed an assault on him. Yet, under the laws of his state, he would not be able to borrow his father's hunting rifle due to his ancient restraining order. Danger lies is who is defined as a prohibited person. The definition can be lax, fluid, amended, open to judicial interpretation, and vary across county borders. This may be the intent of some gun control groups who have stated purpose of making gun ownership as complicated, difficult, and expensive as possible. It's the new way to restrict guns from certain people. Remember that gun control has its roots in the racism of America's history, and we still use it. Today, we just dress it up real nice in big words. Oh, he said something there. Might want to rewind the tape. The other intentional gotcha is what the definition of transfer might be. In the first state to pass, should I say it? Universal background check legislation, the wording was such that if a friend admired your new Glock while standing in the adjoining alley at the firing range and you handed it to him for inspection, then you became an instant felon. Gun control advocates claimed that would never happen, but they also claimed firearm registration would never lead to confiscation before the confiscations began in New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and California. Poorly worded legislation is an endangerment to decent people, but no barrier to evil ones. Lastly, such universal background check. Laws are useless without universal gun registration. Some contend this is the endgame for the universal background check movement. Since the public openly rebels at the suggestion of gun registration, voters are smarter than politicians give them credit for. One gambit might be to pass the otherwise popular universal background check law and either A, turn it into a state-level registration process, or B, later claim the background check law is not working, quote, well enough that a tiny additional piece of legislation is needed, and it won't be called registration, though in reality it will be. Legislation must have efficacy, otherwise it is abuse. For a law to be of any use, it must be effective and enforceable. If 40% plus of crime guns come from unregulated sources, universal background check, have no efficacy at all. The only enforcement then comes from add-on charges after a crime, like you are charged with first-degree murder and not filing background check paperwork. How do you plead? It is also enforced in order to harass honest people who simply want to lend a gun to a daughter in danger or an uncle who wants to go hunting, or to sell a spare revolver to the same neighbor who babysits your kids. And this, my friends, is not what America is made of. Universal background check. Now, the next time you hear that, I want you to make the same face that you, after you heard that so many times, you're sick of hearing it that way. It makes you sick, right? It was cute in the beginning, but after a while, it got annoying. Yeah. That was on purpose. I want you to get used to, next time you hear that phrase, to be indignant. To know that it's a ruse, that it's crap, that is an infringement on your rights. Universal background check is nowhere close to being universal. It's a tool of politicians. It will have no impact on your safety, on violence in your community, or on the protection of your kids. It's ripe for government abuse, and it can't work with the registration of citizens. MarylandShallIssue.org. It's an all-volunteer, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the preservation and advancement of gun owners' rights in Maryland. It seeks to educate the community about the right of self-protection, the safe handling of firearms, and the responsibility that goes with carrying a firearm in public. MarylandShallIssue.org. This is the group, your group, the grassroots group in the state of Maryland. Join us, no matter where you are. MarylandShallIssue.org. This week on the Black Man with the Gun Show, I want to take you to the Motor City, to Motown, to Detroit itself. You know, Motown was the most successful record label of soul music, with a net worth totaling $61 million. During the 1960s, Motown achieved spectacular success for a small label. 79 records in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 between 1960 and 1969. Long recognized as the historic heart of the American automotive industry, Detroit took on the nickname Motor City. The state's automotive industry provided a model for mass production that other industries later adopted. Henry Ford pioneered the use of the assembly line in manufacturing automobiles. But because of factors like unemployment, poverty, drug addiction, homelessness, and just basic economics, a loss of hope, the violent crime rate of 2,057 per 100,000 residents is the second highest in the nation after St. Louis. And to make it all worse, there's a history of serial killers in Detroit. That's right, you heard me, serial killers. But before I get to the history, let me tell you what's going down right now. Police are concerned that a possible serial killer is on the loose in Detroit and began inspecting hundreds of vacant homes Friday for more victims and identified a person of interest 2 days after the decomposed body of a third woman was discovered. Mayor Mike Dugan predicted it would take 2 weeks to check 1,000 properties on Detroit's east side. Other crews then will board up the houses, a job that could last through July, before they eventually demolished. The bodies of 3 women have been found in separate vacant houses since March, the latest one last Wednesday. Only one so far has been ruled a homicide, but Dugan said there's a strong possibility, in quotes, that one person is responsible for the deaths. Police Chief James Craig believes the women could have been lured into blighted houses, raped, and killed. He suspects 2 worked in the sex trade. Craig said investigators were seeking a person of interest in the case, a man in his mid-30s who's known to be homeless and who frequents the east side. Police released 2 photos of the man in an effort to generate tips from the public, and he was taken into custody last Friday night. Abandoned houses have been marring Detroit landscapes for years. The city has demolished about 18,000 properties since 2014 and has another 18,000 houses to go, according to Dugan. Getting these houses down is absolutely critical, the mayor said. There were 261 homicides last year, down from 267 in 2017. Moreover, Michigan history is dotted with serial killers who have targeted prostitutes. The men, crime experts say, often preyed on them because they tended not to draw much publicity or public sympathy. Here are some of Michigan's most notorious killers. Donald Murphy, an ex-con, convicted in 2 cases out of 18 young women, 11 of whom worked as prostitutes who were killed in 1980 under similar circumstances. He later confessed to 4 other killings. Victor Malone, found guilty of the first-degree murder of a prostitute in Southfield in 1986 after he had been convicted of murdering 2 prostitutes in Detroit. Benjamin Atkins, also known as the Woodward Corridor Killer, convicted in the deaths of 11 women in Detroit and Highland Park in the 1990s. Many of the victims were in the sex trade. One of his calling cards was leaving a sock in his victim's mouth. He died of AIDS complications in 1997. Shelley Brooks, believed to have killed 7 prostitutes between 2001 and 2006 in Detroit and Highland Park. He was convicted in 2 of the cases and is serving a life in prison without parole. Coral Eugene Watts, nicknamed the Sunday Morning Slasher, was convicted in the deaths of Helen Dutcher and Gloria Steele, 2 Michigan women out of the dozens he is believed to have killed between 1974 and 1982. He got immunity for a dozen murders as part of a plea deal and was almost released on a technicality in 2006. He died of prostate cancer in prison. Leslie Allen Williams, a parolee, was arrested in the kidnapping and attempted rape of a woman in Springfield Township Cemetery. She was discovered in the trunk of his car. He then confessed to the abduction, rape, and slaying of 4 teenage girls in rural Oakland and Genesee counties in 1992. Don Miller. In 1978, Miller forced his way into the bedroom of a 14-year-old girl and raped and tried to strangle her before he was arrested. A year later, a judge sentenced him to 30 to 50 years in prison for rape and attempted murder. Months before he was sentenced, Miller was indicted on murder charges in the deaths of 2 women, one of whom had been his fiancée. He also admitted to killing 2 other women. John Norman Collins was convicted in 1970 of murdering a female Eastern Michigan University freshman, Karen Sue Bindman, 18 of Grand Rapids. Was the last of 7 college co-eds murdered in the Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor area during the late 1960s. However, the then 21-year-old Canadian was never charged with any of the other half-dozen killings. Anthony Guy Walker, who already was in prison for rape conviction, was charged in the 1979 cold case murders of Teresa Carey, Yolanda Madison, and Floyd Beatty. As part of the plea deal in the case, he admitted to 2 other murders, Arlene Salcido in 1975 and Daniel Staggs, who Walker arranged to have killed in prison in 1986. Sounds pretty crappy, right? Pretty hard living if you're in Detroit. Pretty rough if you're just trying to survive and a female. Well, enter the good guy. You see, in our area, in our community, in the gun rights movement, there exist people that also want to protect and save others, not just the police. They're regular citizens who believe in the right to keep and bear arms. One of them is a really good friend of mine. You might know him. His name is Rick Ector. He operates Legally Armed in Detroit, a gun rights advocacy group, and he announced just recently that he's providing, again, a free firearm shooting lesson at the Southeast Michigan Target Range for 900 women interested in learning more about firearms and personal protection. There's no charge. Yeah. The safety briefing, the usage of a firearm, ammunition, and range time is 100% free for all attendees. No prior firearms training or experience is required of the women who desire to take advantage of the lesson, and further experienced women merely desiring to improve their marksmanship skills are also welcome to attend. This free shooting lesson offer is the brainchild of Rick Ector, an NRA-approved firearms trainer. After seeing a local television newscast about the young woman's body being discovered on the east side of Detroit 8 years ago. This has been going on for a while, and this event is the 8th consecutive year that it's been going on. In the first year, only 50 women were trained. However, last year the event grew sufficiently to teach over 700 women how to safely operate a pistol. You see, in our community, we believe in taking care of our own, and our own just happens to be our neighbors, our community. The anti-right side likes to go off about how crazy we are and how we must eliminate all firearms, but we fail to realize that the good guys like us are also the ones who are keeping things safe. Rick says he believes there's many women in the state of Michigan who are curious about firearms and their role of self-defense, but are reluctant to investigate due to fears. He says if giving women a freak lesson by a credentialed professional translates into women just trying it, it'll be a productive use of his time. Rick is a really good dude. I mean, he's just my friend and my brother from another mother. Here's Rick in his own voice. Okay, I poached this from NRA TV, Cam and Company's show, back in May.
Well, listen, I tell you what, this weekend, we've got an event coming up in Michigan that really is all about support for the right to keep and bear arms. I want to welcome to the program right now our friend Rick Ector from the Firearm Academy of Detroit. Rick, how are you, sir?
Hey, man, I am great. How are you doing today?
I am excellent. I appreciate you coming on the program. I didn't realize that it was this weekend. I had talked to you about this a little bit at the NRA annual meeting in Indianapolis, Indiana, but this is a big deal. Each and every year, you put this together. You've got, I don't know how many dozens of volunteer instructors. You've got folks who are donating ammunition, and you get hundreds of women out for free firearms instruction. This year, you all are aiming for 900 individuals.
That is correct. Our goal is 900 women to be trained how to safely handle, load, discharge a firearm, and we're going to make it happen in one day. I literally have an army of credentialed firearms trainers, range safety officers, at a range that graciously donated the use of their facility. Man, it's going to be a great thing. Just one thing I want to correct you on. The registration for the event is this Sunday on Mother's Day at 8 a.m. And it'll stay open all the way throughout the week until we have those 900 registrations processed. But I imagine that this event will probably be full by the end of Mother's Day. That is my goal, even though we're shooting for 900 instead of the 700 we did last year.
I suspect you're correct, and I appreciate you correcting me. So there is still the opportunity for women in Michigan, and this is open to women only. Is this open to Michigan residents only? Could you have women from Ohio or Illinois or Wisconsin come out as well if they wanted to?
Definitely, and I had a number of people actually make the trek over into the Wolverine state, and I would welcome them with open arms, and they're welcome to come and participate and shoot. I'm going to see what's the furthest distance one of our attendees will be from, but it's going to be a great event, man, and it's all about empowering women. The training is free, one-on-one in the booth with a firearms trainer who's been vetted by me personally, free ammunition. We're going to give out some little gifts and door gifts and things, man, to make it a fun event. But the thing I think most women really get out of it, other than learning how to discharge a gun, is just meeting some other women who have an interest and start friendships and overcome that barrier of going to the gun range by themselves.
Absolutely. And, this is not the first year that you've done this. In fact, you talked about last year you were aiming for 700 individuals. The fact is, year after year, as more people become aware of this event and, women who go out one year tell their friends, hey, this is coming up again, the interest just seems to be growing phenomenally, Rick. It's amazing that you still have, it seems like almost this untapped audience of women who are hungry for this information, who are hungering for this type of training and education.
Man, and I make it happen every year without media coverage, man. You know, the regional, local networks, national networks, they know about this event. I sent them a press release. They have absolutely zero interest in talking about all of these hundreds of women being trained in one day in Detroit. I think it's national news, man. But I'll just be content with being a secret in the Second Amendment.
Talking again with our friend Rick Ector, firearms instructor there in Detroit. So, all right, so if women want to sign up for this, again, they can do so starting on Sunday, Mother's Day. Where do they sign up and register for this?
The best place to go to get the registration links will be over on Facebook. Most people are somehow connected on Facebook. They have an account there. Our page on there, you'll be links on our page, which is facebook.com. All you have to do is remember /Michigan CCW. That's the Rick's Firearm Academy Detroit page. There'll be links all over the place. You can't miss them. It's real simple. Laptop, or if you have a cell phone, easy access, hit the link. And I'm not obtrusive. I just want only 2 pieces of information. I want your name and your email address, and I'll send your e-ticket by email. There's a computer program in cyberspace that does that automatically. You don't have to print it out. Just show it on your phone on the day of the event, which will be the 19th. But as we stated before, registration opens this Sunday, Mother's Day, 8 a.m.
Absolutely. And Rick, again, thank you for everything you do, sir. It is fantastic. Thank you, by the way, to all of those other volunteer instructors. When you talk about this army of instructors that you have, how many other firearms instructors are going to be out there, you know, giving of their time just to make sure that anybody who shows up gets that training that they want?
I will have approximately 60 fellow firearms trainers, man. And one of the things that I really enjoy about my fellow trainers here in Metro Detroit, they recognize that this event is worthy and that it is something that they're willing to donate their time, and they're glad to be there, and they share my passion for empowering women with the ability to protect themselves and their babies.
And that is my friend, Rick Ector, doing what he does best. So, you hear all the negatives all the time. Well, you won't hear them here. My job is to share the real news, share the real people, the real heroes out here. To encourage those still in the fight, who are doing the right thing at the right time. I know you go through a lot on your day-to-day as a pro-gun person. I know you do. Here, I understand. Ladies, don't let nobody tell you about owning a firearm is dangerous. It's dangerous not to own one. Empower yourself. Learn. Protect. Defend. And you can even have fun with these things. Our world is increasingly becoming a dangerous place. And we're just trying to help.
This portion of the show is sponsored by CrossbreedHolsters.com. Crossbreed Holsters has gained national recognition as a maker of the best and most functional concealment holsters available on the market today. Each holster is handcrafted to ensure your firearm is safe and secure while carrying, combined with the best customer service in the industry. Visit CrossbreedHolsters.com.
Hey, did you know in 2017, 3,957 people brought a gun to an airport checkpoint nationwide? That keeps going up every year. A big increase in the number of guns found at airport checkpoints across the country has the TSA reminding everybody of the correct way to travel with firearms. You can do it. Such items can impact everybody's travel. More travelers are bringing firearms to airport checkpoints than ever before. And the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, would like you to stop. But there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. A gun must be unloaded and packed in a hard-sided lockable case. Any ammunition in a magazine or a box needs to be next to the gun, inside the case, and the case must be locked. You take that firearm to a check-in counter. Never bring it to a checkpoint. People who bring weapons to a checkpoint are subject to federal civil penalties as well as criminal charges. A typical fine for carrying a handgun to a checkpoint is $3,900. After you fill out a brief declaration that you are traveling with a firearm, the hard-sided case can be packed in a larger suitcase. Passengers can check a long gun in a longer, hard-sided case as an individual piece of luggage. It then goes in the belly of the plane. It travels just like a checked bag. The idea is nobody should have access to it on the plane. But why do passengers try to go through checkpoints with firearms? Most of them say they forgot or their husband or wife packed their bag. But I'm here to tell you, neither of those excuses fly. What happens? That lane freezes. They have to call law enforcement. We stop the screening process, and for about 15 minutes, that lane is shut down. And that means about 15 to 30 passengers do not get screened during that time period, and it just slows everybody else down. All right, you got that? If you're planning to travel with your firearm, make sure it's in a locked box with your suitcase. You also need to go directly to the airline ticket counter to declare you're taking a firearm with you. You may transport unloaded firearms in a locked, hard-sided container as checked bag only. Declare that firearm and or ammunition to the airline when checking your bag at the ticket counter. The counter must be completely secure and to keep that firearm from being accessed. Locked cases that can easily be opened are not permitted. Be aware that the container the firearm was in when purchased may not adequately secure the firearm when it's transported in checked baggage. If you got questions, contact the TSA firearms regulations and for clarification on what you may or may not transport in your carry-on or checked baggage. And just for extra credit, because I'm a contractor to TSA, that's why I know these things. When traveling, comply with the laws concerning possession of firearms as they vary by local, state, and international governments. If you're traveling internationally with a firearm in checked baggage, please check with Customs and Border Protection website for information and requirements prior to travel. Declare each firearm each time you're presented to transport as checked baggage. Ask your airline about limitations or fees that may apply. Firearms must be unloaded and locked in a hard-sided container and transported as checked baggage only. I think this is like the fourth time you're hearing it from me. As defined in 49 CFR 1540.5. A loaded firearm has a live round of ammunition or any component thereof in the chamber or cylinder or in a magazine inserted in the firearm. Only the passenger should retain the key or combination to the lock unless TSA personnel request a key to open the firearm container to ensure compliance with TSA regulations. You may use any brand or type of lock to secure your firearm case, including TSA recognized locks. Firearms parts, including magazines, clips, bolts, and firing pins, are prohibited in carry-on baggage, but may be transported in checked baggage. Replica firearms, including firearm replicas that are toys, may be transported in checked baggage only. Rifle scopes are permitted in carry-on and checked baggage. And for those who love that technical talk, United States Code Title 18, Part 1, Chapter 14, firearms definition includes any weapon, including a starter gun, which will or is designed to or may be readily be converted to expel a projectile by action of an explosive, the frame or receiver of any such weapon, any firearm muffler or firearm silencer, or any destructive device as defined by 49 CFR 1540.5. A loaded firearm has a live round of ammunition or any component thereof in the chamber or cylinder or in a magazine inserted in the firearm. Ammunition is prohibited in carry-on baggage, but may be transported in checked baggage. Firearm magazines and ammunition clips, whether loaded or empty, may be securely boxed or included within a hard-sided case contained an unloaded firearm. Read the requirements governing the transportation of ammunition in checked baggage as defined by 49 CFR 175.10, subparagraph A8. Small arms ammunition, including ammunition not exceeding .75 caliber and shotgun shells of any gauge, may be carried in the same hard-sided case as a firearm. Just trying to help my folks out. You know, I've been working as a contractor for TSA for almost 5 years now. Not the guys who do the touchy-feely stuff to you. No, I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who protects the administrators and all those folks back home. But hopefully my days of wearing a uniform will be over here shortly, and I'll be wearing a suit and tie again shortly as I just got a new job, and I'm waiting for the official word for that. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I don't think you understand, but I'll tell you some other time. Have you heard my other podcast? Speak Life. Proverbs 18:21 says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Join me in faith and be a part of my family on a podcast that gives you what you missed in church. SpeakLifePodcast.com. Serving Jesus without boundaries. SpeakLifePodcast.com. And we're on Facebook too. SpeakLifePodcast.com. If you are a supporter of this podcast, I want to give you some gifts. I got a whole bunch of swag, stuff I've gained from companies and commercial stuff that I've done. And it's just sitting here looking at me. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it to my folks, my peeps. If you're my peeps, then I'm going to make sure you get some of this swag. So if you're a part of patreon.com/Black Man with a Gun family, shoot me an email and I'll be picking from the list of those who are paying attention. So send me an email if you're a Patreon member with your address, and then look at your mailbox. I'll contact you and tell you what's coming. All right? Not a member? Man, what's going on with you? Be a show enough supporter. Are we the meanest? Are we the prettiest? Are we the baddest mofo low down around this town? Are we not the supporters of the black man with a gun? I can't hear you. Patreon.com/Black Man with a Gun. All right. On a personal note, I'm just glad I'm able to talk again. For the last 7 days, I have been under the weather. I had a really bad sore throat. I had flu-like symptoms. I felt like I had something loose in my esophagus. And it was a pain in the neck. And it was no joke. I thought, man, what if I could never podcast again? What if I could never sing again? What if, that stuff would make you sad. But I had some good people looking out for me, and I rested a little bit. I drank plenty of fluids. I prayed a lot and got myself together. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this community. If there's anything I can do for you, feel free to contact me, to let me know what's going on with you. Check out blackmanwithagun.com when you get a chance. Dave is still writing some cool stuff over there. And I'm going to try to put some of the links to this episode up there in the future. I'm going to do more of my podcast and my blog. Just keep me in your prayers. And don't forget, Speak Life Church is alive and well and doing pretty good, actually. It's a good thing. It's for us. Shout out to freedomhunters.org. If you want to check them out, they are doing some good work. freedomhunters.org. And thank you, Rick Ector, for keeping the women safe in the Motor City. Thank you, man, for doing what you do, for as long as you've been doing it. Just in case nobody has told you this today, I love you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until the next time you hear my voice, shalom, baby.
Until next time, friends.
To keep in touch with Kenn and his cause, head over to blackmanwithagun.com.
Blanchard.media.